My beard is getting scruffy.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, hey, we're live, by the way. I probably shouldn't use this as a mirror. Hey, everybody. Well, someone's already here. I haven't shared a link yet. Calm down, crazy people. Man, we were having a slight technical difficulties, but we made it in. Just wanted me to sweat a little bit. That's all. And share a link here. Yeah, I was all ready to go live. How about that? You mind sharing the link on the Discord?
Discord.
Yeah. All right, folks and peoples and thingamabob shops. How's it all going? Hope you all read the lesson. Apparently you all left. No, it's probably YouTube just lying to me again. Either that or they had something against shop bobs and thingamabobs. That's what I just said, and then it said 0 viewers. Anyway, good to have you guys all here. Or watching later, whatever it is.
I'm just gonna copy you.
You're so slow. Oh my gosh, a dog. Why is she here? What okay, yeah. Yes, you know you're the mascot. Say hi. Say hi. Skydog, here's your photo. Hi. Yes, we're going to talk about the purging of Canaan. Yes, holy war. Very You scratched me. Why? Get down.
No. Ah!
Wow, she's good at causing problems. Yeah.
I gotta send the proper link, and somehow,
the improper link was made.
Give me 1 minute.
You fail, wife.
I know it.
Anyway, we'll get us started here now. Aha! I think we're good. Yes, we're in the tiny box. Excellent, Mundo.
Yeah, the first one did it.
So, ladies and gentlemen, we'll be getting into it. I hope you all read your thingamabob, read the lesson. I don't think I actually put the right link in the description. Ooh. But hey, you'll be able to figure it out. You're smart people. So, today's lesson is Holy War. Yes. God's Holy War. What's all that noise behind me?
That's just a kettle.
Oh!
Katie, put the kettle on.
I did ask for coffee. Anyway, where was I? We need to get started because I'm so distracted today. Like, I have 2 days to finish up my game jam, and I am nowhere near done. I don't know if I'm going to be able to even get something slapped together that could be considered a game, but I'm going to make something that looks cool at least. That's my goal.
Panorama of a castle.
Yes, there you go. Flying castle. That's what's important. What more do you need? What? People have made have made less interesting walking simulators with less interesting visuals.
That's called virtual reality.
Anyway. Oh man, we'll just get started here. So, lesson 10, Holy War. Even the most heathen amongst you, dear readers, will most likely have heard of Jericho. In retrospect, that might be a bit of an assumption. Some of you, perhaps, only the name floating from the culture at large. If your detachment from Christianity was severe. So we won't delve too deeply into the parts of the story more commonly explored. If you're new enough to the faith that you know nothing about Joshua and the walls of Jericho, then you can find 1,000 different serviceable lessons on the subject. We are, after all, trying to burn through the Bible in time for Christmas. For our purposes, I want to jump to the part every churchian and their dog's mother skips over or even ignores with prejudice. The aftermath of the Isrealites' faith and the results of God's will. So the people shouted, and the trumpets were blown. As soon as the people heard the sound of the trumpet, the people shouted a great shout, and the wall fell down flat, so that the people went up into the city, every man straight before him, and oh my God, a siren! No. And they captured the city. Then they devoted all in the city to destruction, both men and women, young and old, oxen, sheep, and donkeys, with the edge of the sword. But to the two men who had spied out the land, Joshua said, "Go into the prostitute's house and bring out from there the women and all who belong to her, as you swore to her." So the young men who had been spies went and brought out Rahab and her father and mother and brothers and all who belonged to her. And they brought all her relatives and put them inside the camp of Israel. And they burned the city with fire and everything in it. Only the silver and gold and the vessels of bronze and of iron they put into the treasury of the house of the Lord. Joshua 6:20-24. Yeah, that's I don't know about you, but every time we talked about that story in my Sunday school classes, they left out the whole part of mass genocide. Of killing everyone under the walls, animals too. Like God was very serious about purging the Canaanites, very specifically those with blood related to the giants and the Nephilim. This was the whole, the point, getting rid of the cultures and the evil that was popping up in Canaan. And when popping up in Canaan and stopping them before they can get a foothold again on Earth and start taking everything over. And so he would demand holy war of specific cities, which basically meant everything had to die there. Nothing could be taken. And he takes it very seriously. All right, well, we're going to keep reading. This isn't something we should shy away from as, well, you just start ignoring parts of the Bible, you're no good than a church, no better than any church in. So even if this makes you uncomfortable, it's important to read it and see what God's doing. Churchians will never cease to amaze me in their ability to see only what they want to see in the Bible. The walls of Jericho falling down by faith in God's power is a staple in every Sunday school course I've ever read or been a part of as a child, but I never truly read the whole story till I was a teenager. I think we can all see why. Modern heretics obsessed with slandering crusaders and every attempt of Christian men to root out evil might be a tad uncomfortable with the fact that after the walls fell, every man, woman, child, and even animals were slaughtered in Jericho. Everyone but Rahab the prostitute and her family who helped the spies of Israel when they were passing through the city. And again, we have examples of sin and even hereditary sin in this case reflecting on people and people being punished by them. This is a practical thing. As we see later, certain groups were not put to the sword who were supposed to be killed off. And what did they become? They became a stumbling stool. They were the children of the devil used to bring all the Israelites down. And that led to more human sacrifices and all kinds of stuff. Like the original term for hell is referencing a field outside of Jerusalem where they would sacrifice baby boys and toddlers to Baal, where they would heat up a statue and then would basically throw the child in it. Or on it. I think it was arms were out and they would put, horrible death. And, often their own parents would be tossing them in there. It's that kind of stuff. It's rough for people to kind of grasp in the modern age. The practical side of God's war against Canaan. The fact remains that when you have cultures of this sort fighting, you can't leave a remnant left because they will drag your children down. And, it's one of those lessons that I'm uncomfortable with myself. But I also realize, first of all, sorry, I got distracted by this. We'll keep reading.
Are you distracted by that pen?
Yes. Have you popped out its eyes all the way?
Yeah.
It's just intense. Look at that. Look how far it goes out.
I was going to distract you with your reading.
Yep.
The kettle. Never mind.
This was a direct command from God, one he took so seriously that when just one man amongst the Israelites disobeyed and took a small amount of plunder, not even sparing anyone, just taking some loot for himself, God removed his blessing from them and temporarily turning them over to their enemies for a short time till they rooted out the troublemaker and stoned him and his family. So Joshua sent messengers, and they ran to the tent, and behold, it was hidden in his tent and with the silver underneath. And they took them out of the tent and brought them to Joshua and to all the people of Israel, and they laid them down before the Lord. And Joshua and all of Israel with him took Achan the son of Zerah, and the silver, and the cloak, and the bar of gold, and his sons and daughters, and his oxen, and donkeys, and sheep, and his tent, and all that he had, and they brought them up to the valley of Achor. And Joshua said, Why did you bring trouble on us? The Lord brings trouble on you today. And all Israel stoned him with stones. They burned them with fire and stoned them with stones. Joshua 7:22-25. These are the men God honed in the desert for 40 years. Let this sink in. God had 40 years to bring up this generation of Israel, and this is the result of his efforts. A violent warrior race who did not hesitate to kill even their own for disloyalty to God. That isn't to say we should be stoning a thief or even heretic, but a holy war in the biblical sense is a different animal, and these men were very well understood it. Moreover, as we can see, when the Almighty makes a command, yes, even one of warfare and purging, if we fail to follow his decree, we will be punished, as can be seen here, and later when the monarchy would be established. And Samuel said, Though you are little in your own eyes, are you not the head of the tribes of Israel? The Lord anointed you king over Israel. And the Lord sent you on a mission and said, Go devote to destruction the sinners, the Amalekites, and fight against them until they are consumed. Why then did you not obey the voice of the Lord? Why did you pounce on the spoil and do what was evil in the sight of the Lord? First Sam, sorry, keep going. 1 Samuel 15, chapter 15, 17-19. And Samuel said, Has the Lord as great delight in burnt offerings and sacrifices as in obeying the voice of the Lord? Behold, to obey is better than sacrifice, and to listen than the fat of rams. For rebellion is as the sin of divination, and presumption is as iniquity and idolatry. Because you have rejected the word of the Lord, he has also rejected you from being king. Now, interesting there, 1 Samuel 15:22-23. Disobedience to God is compared to witchcraft, essentially, divination. Divination in particular is like communicating with dead and the spirits and blah blah blah. And whoa, man, YouTube is really screwing with me, guys. Like, I kid you not. It says you guys are here now and the like, but 2 seconds ago it said there was no one here and there was no likes. It was so weird. Hi.
Hi.
Let me kiss your cheek in front of everyone. Okay, I did it. Anyway, make sure there's no chats. Okay, and you're welcome. So this is one of those verses that churchians absolutely cannot look at. I'm here and joined 2 seconds ago. Nice to see you walking northward. Don't think I've seen you before. A new person.
Maybe he's been watching a while.
No, he said he just got here. I still blame YouTube. I don't trust them. They're shifty. But yes, as we can see here with Samuel, the evil in witchcraft and divination and all that. We've talked about that in previous lessons. But disobedience to God, even disobedience of killing off an entire city. Like, it's one thing to say that. It has to be a heck of a different animal to go through that. It's one of those things I'm glad I'm in a time period where I don't feel like I'm going to be commanded to do such a thing. But, what a crazy time. And God was, again, so serious about this that all of Achan's family, essentially, so the guy who stole some stuff from Jericho, right, when they were supposed to burn it all and kill everyone, he didn't save anyone. He just took some stuff. It wasn't even crazy valuable stuff. So like some gold, a cloak, a nice rug, that kind of thing, some silver. Silver, 30 pieces of silver later. And from that, God basically, if you look at the story, considered him, his family, and indeed all of Israel as unclean because they had taken the unclean, what was devoted for destruction, out of Jericho. It's interesting to note as well that there was a curse put on Jericho that Joshua said, which is really fascinating. It's a side note here. I need to do a whole thing about curses and whatnot, but basically said, if anyone tries to rebuild this city at the creation of the front gate or the walls or something like that, his firstborn will die, and creation of like the back gate or whatever, something like that, his youngest will die. And this curse actually comes to pass. Somebody rebuilds Jericho and he loses 2 kids in the process. It's a very fascinating thing. Curses and punishments and all the rest. But I'm getting ahead of myself. This, in a lot of ways, this holy war thing is about obedience to God, no matter how crazy it is. I'm not saying he's going to tell you to go murder everyone in the street. Okay, that's generally not his style. But we have to recognize that God had 40 years to make the Israelites who they were in this moment, as I brought up. That he honed them, he built upon them, he showed them the sins of their fathers, the weak generation we talked about in the previous lesson. He showed how they were so inept that God couldn't use them for his great task of purging the giant clans and the descendants of rebels and Nephilim and all this fancy stuff going on in Canaan. Like, there's a reason why the counterattack too, right? So we'll get into that later. I think we talk about the monarchy. I don't think I talked about this, but if you've heard of the Philistines, for example, right? Those guys, there's a reason why Goliath and his brother, I think it was his brother, yeah, his brother were involved with those guys. Giants, right? They were a counterattack to retake Canaan. So this is God going into Canaan, taking it, purging all of the descendants of his enemies, the rebellious sons of God, right? We go back into Genesis, rebellious sons of God who mix with mankind and create children. The whole point of that is copying what... Oh, coffee. It's a little black this time, but that's okay. I'm very racist about my coffee. It's fine.
You sure?
Mm-hmm.
Not too black for you?
No. Then you think I'm the racist one?
Hey, I'm Ukrainian, man. That's
Sure.
Oh, sorry, Slavic.
Mm-hmm.
Can't say Ukrainian.
You all right over there?
I'm okay.
You're okay. Don't worry, there'll be more crashing if she actually needs help. But and I don't mean to repeat everything we've talked about, but if you remember, right, going all the way back to like the first lesson, God creates mankind to take dominion, to conquer the earth, right? The Nephilim and the descendants of these angels, these fallen watchers, these beings of the divine court of heaven who have rebelled against God, make their own children by mixing their DNA with the man's DNA in an attempt to take the earth, right? They thought God's plan was pretty darn good, so they made their own children to take the earth, to take the vineyard, as seen in a parable that Jesus talks about later on. They're, you guys have been following along for all these lessons. You know what I'm talking about, right? And so that's why you have giants coming in with the Philistines. They are children created by a dark watcher trying to take back the land that God took. And that's why these wars were so brutal and so much slaughtering going on. And you had such weird things going. Like later on, I don't know if I bring you up, but there's literally these dudes who are lion-headed. And they freak out David's guys so bad that they... like, the whole story is really wild. Basically, if you've ever heard of them, you should read about them. We don't get into them in these lessons. Yeah. Am I not allowed to repeat myself? God, you hear that? You hear that? Nah, she's like, oh, I remember this is what she's saying. But David's mighty men, like the kinds of guys who kill giants. One of them kills the brother of Goliath or the son of Goliath or something like that. I forget which it is. Another guy like kills another giant Egyptian dude. The other guy kills like 500 guys and kills so many in one sitting that his sword is like frozen to his hand at the end. Crazy stuff. Right. Those crazy mother truckers. They find this dude with a lion head. They call him the lion-headed men of Moab. A couple of them kill him. And then they start freaking out. And they see more of them coming. So they all get together. They kind of like guard up, and then they like offer up the body back to the men of Moab, the lion-headed men of Moab, and go like, go away. And they do. Once they get the body back. The funny thing about this, right? Your first thing that people always say, and I swear it happens every single time, the same indentation, the same tone. It doesn't matter where I bring the story up. Someone always says, "Oh, it was probably just men with lion-headed cuirasses, like helmets that were shape of lions," right? And they always say it like in the same way, the same tone. Doesn't matter if I'm talking to Christians, atheists, what it is. And it's like something else is talking through them. It is the strangest experience of my life.
Yeah, mine's wild.
Grace. But the story clearly indicates it's more than that, because these are guys, right, who literally, like David himself, for example, killed, I think it was 100 Philistines and cut off the ends of their penises, their dicks, right? He cut off he circumcised them after they were dead. I'm getting whiter now. To get married, right? That was the stipulation for Saul, for him to get to marry essentially the princess, right? Was to kill 100 of their enemies and bring back the tips of their dicks. That's proof that he did it, right? And he did, and that's how he got his first wife. And right, and then the other guy, right? That was King David. You have all those other guys I brought up, killing giants and all this stuff. A dude in a lion-headed helmet is not going to freak these guys out. In fact, if you look at the story, it seems like they thought this guy was a normal man wearing a lion-headed cuirass, and then they killed him and realized, holy crap, this is literally a lion-headed man. Like straight out of, like that. Greek mythology kind of, oh my God, it's real. And then they see more of them coming, and they freak out and go, just take the body. We didn't mean any harm. And then the lion-headed men leave. It's a very fascinating story. And incidentally, if I can go off on a tangent, but this is why you're here for tangents, right? A lot of cryptid stories in the United States, like, Bigfoot or dog-headed men and all that, have a tendency of going after bodies if one does get killed in the story and taking them with them, basically taking the bodies with them, hiding them or bringing them off. A very fascinating theme. I would like to point out to people that there seems to be a lot of indication that there is some, if we get into some of the weird stuff in the genetic code and whatnot, that mankind have been spliced genetically a lot. Yes, the tangents are expected. Thank you. A lot. And it seems also that if these watchers and whatnot were willing to mix and do weird things with man to make giants, that they would probably do other things and try to mix man with other stuff. Like, I don't know, a wolf. It's pretty freaky. Or a lion. Or other shit. Why not? You take these things that have rebelled against God and now have no moral code to speak of. Why wouldn't they do all this crazy stuff? But, that's still a wee moment. Basically, the Bible has never explicitly says that strange spiritual creatures don't exist, and then also gives reasons for why they might exist. And then we have moments like this. And then there's things like the Leviathan. We could be here all day. All day. All right. God is merciful, but when his judgment is declared, going against his will by granting mercy the Almighty has denied to his enemies, is rebellion against God, and is as bad as witchcraft in his eyes. As things turned out, the Lord had a very good reason to purge his enemies' children, and he laid out the reality in no uncertain terms. That's a weird space. Therefore, be very strong to keep and to do all that is written in the book of the law of Moses, turning aside from it neither to the right hand nor to the left, that you may not mix with these nations remaining among you, or make mention of the names of their gods, or swear by them, or serve them, or bow down to them. But you shall cling to the Lord your God, just as you have done to this day. For the Lord has driven out before you great and strong nations, and as for you, no man has been able to stand before you to this day. One man of you puts to flight 1,000, since it is the Lord your God who fights for you, just as he promised. Be very careful, therefore, to love the Lord your God. For if you turn back and cling to the remnant of these nations remaining among you, and make marriages with them, so that you associate with them and they with you, know for certain that the Lord your God will no longer drive out these nations before you, but they shall be a snare and a trap for you, a whip on your sides and a thorn in your eyes, until you perish from off this good ground that the Lord your God has given you. Joshua 23, 6 through 13. This is an uncomfortable truth that virtually all Christians have avoided now. And that is, if we're fighting the supreme evil, right? And obviously God's more powerful, don't get me wrong. This would be more than just a spiritual fight. It would be a physical fight as well. And nations would be the pawns in these fights. I'm not saying like we're not going to sit here and say, oh, one nation good, one nation bad. No. They kind of influx according to who's influencing who at what time, if that makes any sense. Sometimes one group might be on the side of the angels. Take the Spaniards, for example, fighting the Aztecs. You know, a lot of people might. I like that tangent a lot, yes, because it's fun to. It's this one when I was growing up, like Cortez was considered the devil, evil, just coming in and shooting all these nice natives who did nothing wrong to him, and he just wanted all the gold. Those Spaniards, and then lo and behold, as an adult, I do research and I find out Cortez was a crazy mother trucker who like had his men pick up boats and carry them through the jungle to attack a city, like to get over the moat of a city. Fought thousands and thousands of guys all by themselves. Fought his allies for a little bit till they started to respect him. Okay, we're on your side, and got like 100,000 guys to join him because everyone hated the Aztecs. All of them hated because the Aztecs were cannibalistic assholes. Everyone hated those mother truckers, and there was a good reason to hate them. So much so that they would much prefer to be enslaved by the Spanish. They were already enslaved by the Aztecs, but you get the point. The funny thing is, when you get into some of the stuff that the Spanish wrote down about the Aztecs, as it would turn out, they had a prophecy. Like essentially, it's like Christ visited them, or some prophetic Christ-like figure visited them, told them to get their act together, and if they didn't, essentially, these what would be the Spaniards, but you know they described them differently, would come across the sea and kill them, and that's what happened. God actually warned them. They had this story about this prophet who told them how to be better people. They didn't listen, and thus the Spaniards came and killed them. It's kind of a wild time, and as we see even more like this before wife, we can see this interesting trend as well. If you look at the current Mexico and all that, Skydog says, "Bless you." Well, you're allergic to bullshit. Maybe you're allergic to cannibals. Is that it?
Exactly.
Alcohol, motherfuckers.
Also, that dirty raging of the house.
Yeah.
Stirred up the.
That's true. We're doing spring cleaning in winter. Just use this shirt. Skydog down. I need this shirt for work tomorrow. Uh-oh.
It's been stretched and it's already faded.
You're welcome. Right.
Another shade of that.
Anyway.
That was consent.
Mm-hmm.
That was consent.
Anyway, the point is, later on, I can clearly see a point where the Spaniards were not on the side of the angels. Ironically, if you look at their involvement, the Habsburgs, who would be connected to the Spanish throne, we see them using a lot of manipulation in Europe to basically dominate and try to imperialize everything under a banner and turn the Catholic Church from a religious institution. It stayed religious to a degree, but turned it into their personal bludgeoning weapon to force various kingdoms to give up their holdings, and through political marriages and then assassinations, basically taking over entire kingdoms and then fleecing them of all their money. In that sense, the Spanish were definitely not part of the good guys, right? But we could argue, right, the Habsburgs got greedy, intermingled with certain groups, and through there lost their way, right? Now, that's not to say that the British that they were fighting later were on the side of the angels all the time, or even while they were fighting. For example, there's I bring up Crowley a lot too, that fucker. But that guy. But talked about how they used witchcraft to protect the island, and they did 3 different rituals, and each time was to confuse the fleets of that were coming against the island. So the first one was the Spanish Armada. Second one was the French fleets, and all that. And then the third one was against Hitler, designed to drive him nuts or something. Now, one could argue each time that it worked pretty well. Now, it's said that the ritual was so powerful that the witches who did it in World War II died a couple of weeks later, like their entire life force was drained or something. Now, it's also possible, and we shouldn't ignore that, though I think there is power in witchcraft and all that they were just trying to leech off of the success, if that makes sense. It's very possible, for example, that God didn't want Napoleon to win and listen to the prayers of those who didn't like the whole revolution. The whole revolution thing, the atheist revolution going on in France land, if you know what I mean. And, despite the fact that Napoleon wasn't as crazy as the other revolutionaries and he kind of slapped them around a bit, you have to remember that he was not a Christian or not even a good man. He made it very clear at his inauguration. What's the word where the king's made king? Whatever. He was being crowned emperor by some Catholic priest or whatever, and he reached up, grabbed the crown, and put it on his head, signifying that I am taking this power. It is me. I am the steadfast, blah, blah, blah. Basically, the symbolism of the king kneeling and a religious man putting the crown on his head is saying, you are under God. You may be above us as king, but you're given this kingship by divine right by God, and thus you are judged by him and your actions, if that makes sense. While Napoleon, in that act, is saying, I make myself emperor. I am God, essentially. Little wonder that God turned his face against him. That little Corsican. Yeah, he wasn't French, by the way. He was Corsican.
I just said a little pouty tubber.
Anyway.
It was a little baby Zelensky.
Oh my God. It's a bad example because Napoleon was actually good at fighting. But they both died in Russia. Or both going to. Or they both got their men killed in Russia. How about that? There we go. I should probably get back into this. Right. And
I just think.
Right. There's going to be times when one nation or another is being called to God to do a task. For example, Persia was called to punish the Babylonians for all their crap. But eventually the Persians were punished for their crap, and so on and so forth. And that's why it's important to do your best to control this crap in your nations. Like, we can see a modern example of what happens when too much of one very rebellious, horrible group keeps their bloodline going. All right. Because their bloodline can be connected to spiritual evil and all the rest. Now, this can be purged, but it takes, the power of Christ, the cross, and all that. It's a lot of work. It's not always easy. And I'm bringing up the cartels. The cartels have literally created this crazy amalgamation of the image of Mother Mary and a death goddess from their own Parthenon, and are basically recreating Aztecs again, recreating their evil, crazy religion. You want to know why the cartels are so violent and crazy and vicious and doing disgusting things? It's because they're getting in touch with their Aztec roots. Moreover, it's also the spirits behind that, the watcher entities, the things that were in charge while the Aztecs were around. Well, they're still alive. But you know what I mean? They haven't had their eternal reward yet. And what are they doing? They're waiting to reawaken that so they can be worshipped again. They want their old seat back. The Spanish, when they kicked out the Aztecs, also kicked out their gods, right? And so what happened when they left too many of the Aztecs, in my opinion, alive? I know that's a horrible way to put it, but these people literally, like, if anyone ever didn't deserve any mercy, it was the Aztecs. And a lot of people kind of look at me like, oh, no. What they did to people would make your skin crawl. They just, if you actually look at it without any filters or anything, you're going, okay, wow. Not only did they get what they deserved, they probably got a little too much mercy. And now you see them kind of, right, for their old bloodlines coming back. And part of that also, I think, is because they were conquered. You know what I'm saying? And unfortunately, though I think it's a necessary thing sometimes, that means they were forced into the decision in a way. Now, it was good. There's lots of great Latin Catholics, lots of great Latin Christians out there, okay? But because they as a people didn't choose it, they were forced into it. I think that's why this decision's coming around again.
And is that why they celebrate the Day of the Dead?
Yeah.
Or whatever that school stuff
One of those
is?
many things. And again,
That is a
the
Latin
weird,
thing, isn't
crazy death goddess that they worship now is they basically combine the imagery from the Day of the Dead with Lady Mary
I've seen images of that.
and snakes and shit.
Oh,
They call her
boy.
Lady Death. Now, interesting about that, I don't want to get too... But La Llorona, it's a weird winch entity. It's sad. It's interesting because there's been situations. If you've never heard, this one's kind of more niche, I guess. I hear it all the time because I listen to lots of research, a lot of creepy stuff, and listen to a lot of it. But La Llorona is is a strange witch type entity that is manifested through crying and lots of crying, and then chases you down and kills you in the night or tries to steal your children. The funny thing is, there's been lots of stories, instances that I've heard about where only a Mexican will hear it. Like these people will all be there, right? There'll be a few Mexicans, there'll be some Americans or something, and all the Mexicans hear this crazy crying sound, and the Americans don't hear it. And it's funny, you think of generational sin, you think of generational curses. There is a theory that La Llorona kind of came around about because of an Aztec entity or a woman specifically who cried out like, oh, my children are lost when the Spanish burned everything down. I think more likely, though that could be associated, it's some sort of entity left over from the past who has a claim on the Mexican bloodline, the Aztec bloodline specifically, right? And in this case, if they're not properly prayed up and protected by Christ, comes after them every now and then. It's just a theory. It's just very interesting, weird, crazy stuff that goes on. We can also get sidetracked by a lot of different high strangeness, but I think I'm losing the point. I should get back to reading. Wife's just like, I don't want to talk about witchcraft shit right now. Can we move on? Right. I'll finish the thought. Well, I'm not Mexican. You're not Mexican. It's fine. If anything, being a Dutchman, I probably have something more of the Norse mythology to worry about in my case. Ah! Oh my god! No, you're doing it wrong. You gotta get no.
You gotta like this.
No, you gotta squeeze its nose. You gotta squeeze its nose. Yeah. My wife's gonna keep this, and when I start talking about creepy stuff, she's gonna distract me, going. Anyway, so I'm bringing up, just like in the Bible, you see how the Canaan beliefs and whatnot started cropping back up, and the Philistines were brought in as like a counterattack with giants and whatnot being involved and all this weird high strangeness. We can see it again in the resurgence of the Aztecs with the cartels and the Mexicans and whatnot, rejecting Christianity despite how much Christianity basically let them build a civilization, like a better civilization, shall we say. The Aztecs, I really like this theory that someone brought up, that the Aztecs didn't build their cities, but were squatting on top of them. Like they found a lot of them already built, and then they sat there. And and it seemed now I won't say that's exactly the truth, because who knows. I'm not going to say evil people can't build civilizations. It just tends to be more difficult. Like Carthage and all that, for example, definitely got built up, and I won't ignore it. It's just the Aztecs. They have some interesting things, some mathematical things they learned, but they were like literally these people ate off the floor. Right? It's not like the Japanese where they were sitting down and they have little. No, they ate off the floor. It was something the Spaniards were disgusted by. Okay, they would brought it up a lot. Like the poor people would like eat off the floor in their huts and stuff. Their bad hygiene was half the reason why they were dying out in droves to diseases. And also, this is why the Spaniards, despite being exposed to many diseases of the jungle variety, somehow survived in much better numbers, is because their hygiene was much better. They contrary to the popular belief, they actually had a pretty good concept of how, why people got sick. They didn't understand all the reasoning behind it, but they knew what could get you sick. They knew to stay clean. They knew not to burn stuff burn things from someone who's been really sick of some kind of plague. They didn't just use those blankets again, that kind of stuff. You get what I'm saying? And so it allowed them to not die in droves to typhoid and all the rest. This is something that a lot of people don't think about. More Europeans actually died from diseases brought over from the Americas than the American natives died from the European diseases. Unless, of course, we count numbers, because there's been interesting findings in the Amazon of like entire cities and stuff that are just swallowed by the jungle. Now, who knows if it was just diseases, but it strikes me as more than that, if that makes sense. And, the Black Death didn't completely wipe out Europeans. Why should one disease or even a series of diseases completely wipe out a civilization building cities in the Amazon? So it should have been more than that, whatever that was. But yeah, there was a couple of explorers who went into the deep interior talking about all these crazy cities and like their minds breaking because these cities were so massive and bigger than anything they'd have experienced even in Europe. But by the time more explorers came out there was nothing but jungle. But they've been discovering ruins of these cities in the Amazon. So it's not that they weren't there. It's just the jungle was so thick it swallowed it. Swallowed the all evidence of those cities to those early explorers. That's crazy. I don't know how much of that is, but anyway, from the numbers we have, more Europeans died than, especially the syphilis. Syphilis was a nightmare. Though ironically, might have created the Victorian intensity towards, being prudish and Puritan and all that, because the way syphilis works, it was a sexually transmitted disease. So basically, you had a little Spaniard or a little British explorer guy screwed the wrong native. Okay, he makes it all the way back to his London port calling, whatnot. He's still horny. Right? He's been there for 6 months, but he goes to the theater, finds a chick. Back then, people don't know this. Well, no. Well, that too. But what people don't know is the theater and all that, the plays were actually where people went to get laid. It was kind of like the club back then. Like you went there when you were trying to find affairs and all this other stuff. We don't comprehend this. No. But this syphilis was so prevalent that it burned its way through Europe and killed all the promiscuous people. Well, actually, it didn't burn. It turned your brain into mush. It literally transformed your brain and drove you insane. Yeah. Did you know Nietzsche had syphilis? That's funny. Yeah, it
I'm not
liquefies
gonna
your
I'm
brain.
not
It's
gonna
one of the
overthink it. I'm not
it's
gonna
one of the
overthink it.
craziest diseases in the world. It comes in through the nethers and it liquefies your brain.
It's like,
Yeah, that's crazy
What's the
shit.
difference?
Anyway, yeah, more people died from syphilis than died from whatever smallpox or shit came over to the natives. That's a lot of promiscuous people who died. And because of that, you had this calling of all the promiscuous people. Guess what? Suddenly you only had the Puritan type people who were only going to have like sex with their wife. They weren't going to adultery her. They're not going to have sex with some random guy who just came off the boat, right? Those were all the guys who survived. All the gals who survived. Creating in the next few generations the Victorian era type people who were very, you know what? Not gonna, we're not gonna have sex like that. No, that's no cricket. And yet, those people also conquered 40% of the world, the little British island. So whenever you hear some weird atheist dude talking about, you just need to be free with sex, you just realize that the second you actually get self-control with sex, you can conquer 40% of the world. How about that? Anyway, yeah, that's the danger when you allow too much mercy in one of these situations, is those entities and obviously the descendants are more prone to following those entities again, and they're trying to always reestablish their power network. They're always trying to do it. They're always trying to recreate the cult. Think of all the different names that Baal's had and Beelzebub and all those other things. It's the same entity, just changing its name every so many centuries.
It's changing their name.
Yeah, every so many centuries, trying to regain their followers, or regain some power, and regain some land. That's the point, right? That's always what they're trying to do. So, we'll get back to this. As we will see, the Israelites failed to drive out and purge many of the Canaanites set apart for destruction, both for their sins and ancestry. As a result, they would turn the descendants of these strong men, honed for the destruction of the Lord's enemies, into dark god worshipping, child sacrificing freaks, basically becoming what they came to destroy. It's really annoying. A lesson and a warning of men of action. Allowing tolerance into your ranks is a curse not for yourself, but your children's children. Make no mistake. Let's scroll down. We are another generation God is preparing for legacy and his great vengeance on earth before the final day of the Lord. Like Joshua and Caleb's families, our children are being set apart for the legacy of warriors in Christ who will carve out a place for Christendom to continue and punish the unrepentant enemies of heaven for all their horrific sins. The previous generations of weak, slave-minded, comfort-focused men are dying off in droves. You can thank the facts for that, by the way. Soon they won't be alive to hold the shackles around our feet, and we will be set to the Lord's demands. We will have a decision to make. And if it is evil in your eyes to serve the Lord, choose this day whom you will serve, whether the gods of your fathers served in the region beyond the river, or the gods of the Amorites in which land you dwell. But as for me and my house, we will serve the Lord. Joshua 24, verse 15. Will we serve God? Will we be like Joshua and Caleb, purging institutional evil from our ranks and ensure justice reigns in our societies and thus not incur the wrath of the Lord on our descendants and works? Or will we grant too much mercy and thus leave stumbling stones for our children and children's children? Who, by example, will follow in our steps and let evil fester in their ranks rather than purge the stench? Will we allow the inevitable which we see in our nations and people, now where injustice rules and acts as despicable as these are done in our ranks with almost impunity? To think about this, just think about the Epstein affair, right? That's just a small little look at all the evil and nonsense that's been going on. The proportionate amount of children who disappear every year in the United States is way too high. And it's been too high for decades. Crazy kind of high. And most of these people, off the face of the earth. the evil that we see in the millions slaughtered in abortion, the absolute disgusting state that our culture has been turned into. All of that comes back to tolerance. Too much tolerance.
And it's even going to the churches.
Yeah, well, churches in a while. Your warning lights should go off, especially when you run into Christian groups who are more interested in fighting each other than evil. Why, for the ages, Christians have had more animosity for each other, it would seem, than for actual evil. Bothersome, but what are you going to do? Whew. I don't want to get on that soapbox now. We'll be here all day.
No.
And then, because I have to be fair, if I harp on one, I got to harp on the others, and I got to slap everyone in the face, and then make my Ethiopian joke, since the Ethiopian church has been around this whole time.
That has been your pattern.
I like it. It's fun. It's a great reminder that like all these people are like Catholicism, Copticism, Protestantism, isms, and then you remind them that the Ethiopians exist, and they go, "What?
You're like, eh.
What? They kept the original books from back then this whole time?" Yep. Yeah, they did. Yeah. It's amazing what happens when Black people actually become full Christian and don't allow a lot of their like weird roots getting in the way. They do things like carve monasteries out of solid rock. Love it. Anyway, go back to this. We're almost done. They, unlike the modern man, do know their history and even this doesn't mean we act now. God is preparing us for the struggle. If you act prematurely, you will be snuffed out without support and the full terror of the enemy coming on you. Make no mistake, our enemy is terrified. They, unlike the modern man, do know their history and even more that isn't recorded as readily. They know very well God is planning their demise on earth, a purge before their end when Christ returns. They also know their sins mean they deserve no mercy, and they will and have refused to bend a knee to Christ, so they are condemned. That fear makes them act in excess. And just like when the Israelites tried to force God's hand after he declared the 40-year excursion into the desert, Deuteronomy 1:41 through 44, if you act too early before enough of our generation has been prepared and the boomer slave generation died off, you will be destroyed on your own. Not that God could not defend you, but his plans call for the fall of the empire, and now the rebuilding with his chosen remnant. So prepare, gentlemen. Our time, and even more importantly, our children's time is coming, and our enemy shudders at what God will do with a willing, faithful generation with the stomach to complete his will on earth. That's something important. Like a lot of people don't think about this. Our children are going to be completely different. It's more than like, oh, hey, the boomers compared to the Gen X. No. Like Gen Z and Gen Z's children particularly are going to be an animal that you don't even recognize, especially Gen Z's children, because they're not going to have any other propaganda, right? They're going to grow up around violence. There's no way around it. Just look at what's going on. It's going to be crazy for them. And they're not going to have all this baggage of wondering, oh, is it evil to kill a man? Like, if I kill a murderer, does that just make me like him? No, they're going to just kill him. And they're not going to care. Because that term, there are no atheists in foxholes. And, it's funny to watch the atheists squirm whenever you bring that kind of thing up. But there should be a term of like, there are no moral relativists in genocide. Okay, they're in like ultimate war. They're not going to be sitting around wringing their hands like, but is it fair for me to do that with this culture? What about this? No, they're just going to be. They're here to kill us. We're going to kill them first. That's all it's going to be. It's not going to be complicated to them. They're not going to find an issue. And quite frankly, I'm distracted by a cat. And I don't think most people of the millennial and Gen Z generation are even prepared for what that's going to look like. But it's going to happen. Right. But also, it's important not to act prematurely. I'm not doing a call to violence here, because you will just die alone. Things need to run their course. Right now, you'll just end up in jail, and that'll be it. So, wait it out. Wait for more boomers to die out. And they're dying off in droves. You don't need to push them over the edge. The Mexicans will do that for you and soon enough. Cat. Right? Jesus says to be as crafty as foxes, as wise as serpents. He used the term serpent very importantly. That's the enemy, right? He's saying you have to be as smart as your enemy. So don't be stupid. God's called men like me, men like you, to have children and to prepare them for a reason, because it's them who are going to be in the right moment to act, while we are separated and isolated. It's frustrating. There were a couple of times that our people could have repented. I've brought up the satanic panic, which, again, was more of a satanic realization. And just didn't have the stones to do what was necessary. Epstein, the whole Epstein affair, is another instance where it showed that we just don't have the stones to do what's necessary. They made it clear no justice was ever going to be done. And nothing was done. People have just forgotten about it now. It's funny, when I bring it up with people in real life, there's always this awkward, everyone kind of looks down at their feet and they don't want to talk about it. They want to forget. They want to put all the conspiracy theorists back in their little box in their head, right? Saying, oh, their stuff it's never true. Never mind that the mother of all conspiracy theories, a freaking rape island for the elite with cultic imagery all over it, was discovered and proven to exist with countless celebrities from all over the globe all going to it. Right? Never mind that proved to be real. That one drives me a little nuts sometimes. I'm not going to lie, guys. The fact that every now and then the reality of the situation gets put on full display, and then people slowly filter, forget, and put everything back in their boxes. Their boxes get shattered, and then they slowly close the box up again. It's really irritating. It will drive me crazy till the day I die. But, you look at that whole thing, it makes any 80s action plot where we would feel like the main character is completely justified in all the violence he does because of how evil the villain is. Can't even think of an 80s villain that is actually as nasty as what the Epstein and all his compatriots were. Can you? I can't. Even the most violent 80s villain. There were some crazy ones. Even genetically designed monsters in those things just don't kind of rise to the same effect as those freaky dudes in robes raping and murdering children and throwing their bones in the sea. Right? And yet, you can't convince anyone, though it's reality now, that it would be justified to go full 80s revenge plot on all those dudes. You can't convince them. And so don't try. They're weak. Like it or not, we're a little weak ourselves. Remember when I brought up that line when talking about the generation of Israelites who had to die out? There were surely some of them in that generation who would have, if given the chance, have fought. You and I, we are that. We were the ones who would have fought back. We were the ones who would have actually done it. But we were too few. We were too isolated. And as a generation, the generational sins overwhelmed us. Now, luckily, through the power of Christ, we're able to not, to wash away those sins. right? But it still has an effect. And thus, generations will have to rise up who, won't allow a court system that proven through the very lists that members and judges and all that who were on that island and have an interest in not revealing things, telling them that, this event's over, there's nothing more to see here, go home, right? A generation needs to rise up that will say, no, you don't get to kill children on an island by yourselves and expect us not to pack. Oh, yes, you're very distracted. Yes, oh my gosh, okay, and not expect. Oh, shoot, defenestration. This is crazy fun English word that I love to use, which literally means throwing people out of windows.
Oh, yes.
I can't remember it. Something. Anyway, as a Dutchman,
I think it's...
we have a long history of throwing political leaders we don't like out of... Catch you later, now, walking northward. Of throwing people out of windows. Political leaders who have failed us. And so that's what we're going to wait for. Our job right now is to prepare the remnant for what's coming. That's the best we can do. And fight as best we can, even though it'll be past our prime and time for our children to do it. Oh, you cat.
Okay there.
All right. We'll finish up here.
You're right.
But let's continue our narrative. Joshua leads the Israelites into the promised land, and they purge most, but not all, or enough, of the Lord's enemies, and God has won a victory against his old rebellious sons. Egypt and now Canaan have bowed to his power. Still, as we've seen, the devil has a tactic for when men become too strong in God to be physically destroyed, and the Israelites were going to fall for the plot, hook, line, and sinker. Question 1. Have you had a time in your life where you saw a church or city be conquered from within till you don't recognize the institution or town anymore? How would you have done things differently if you were a leader in said organization or city? Yeah, Carlsbad, my hometown, comes to mind. I'd say most cities these days.
Yeah.
And as far as churches, no, our experience with churches has just been negative. I'm sure that's not an example for us, but I'm sure some of you have seen good churches go bad. Question 2. How would I have done things differently? Well, as a Californian, I would go back in time and during the Civil War, make sure that we broke from the Union, but also didn't join the South, so we could actually get British support. Because if you don't know, the reason why the British didn't support the South was 2 reasons. The first reason was slavery. The British were, not that the fight was actually about slavery, but the British were the ones who were constantly getting rid of slavery in Africa at this time. So it was a political no-no for them to ally themselves with a nation that had slavery, right? Nova. Secondly, it was clear by the time they were even maybe thinking of doing it that the South wasn't going to win, so they weren't going to just jump on a dying horse. So California, if we had said instead of joining with the Union but hadn't joined with the South, we definitely could have expected support from the British and probably the French as well, who didn't want, or maybe even Russia. That would have been interesting. Russia's actually probable, who would have wanted to break down the American power base a little bit and maybe not let them have the West Coast. You having fun? Right? And given the distance between California and everything else, yeah, there was never a better time. But we'll move on. Many of us are preparing physically for the coming struggle around us. What are you doing to prepare yourself and your family for the coming spiritual side of our battle with the principalities of evil? Prayer every day. Yes, I need to work on that a little bit. Vox was right when he said there's no excuse. Question 3. Samuel makes things clear that God wants obedience over sacrifice in religious doctrine. Have you seen denominations, churches, and organizations choose their doctrine over God in the modern era? AG. Methodists, for sure.
Oh, yes.
I'd say pretty much every denomination at this point has done that. Catholics, Coptics, it doesn't matter. Every now and then, like the leaders of the Coptic Church try to say they should join the Catholics again, and they piss off all the laymen of the Coptic Church. It's kind of entertaining, but it shows again leaders everywhere have the snake in their head. But this isn't an episode of Stargate. Okay, it's been fun. Any questions before I sign off and try to get some video game dev in before it's midnight? Any concerns? We got 2 likes. That's nice. That makes me feel nice. And I'm sorry if these themes seem to be kind of joining together too much. I had to put some sunglasses. Woo! I got married with this head too, baby. I was in more shape though. It helps that I have a nice looking face. Anyway, guys are cool. When I have something to show on the video game front, I'll bring it up. For now, it'll probably just be video or something.
It's beautiful waterfalls, right?
Beautiful waterfall, a castle. Well, right now all I have is a floating island.
Oh, look, it's a guy running.
A flying floating island. I need to actually put something on top of it. And
a tree.
Yes. Anyway, the idea, the long thinking idea is I want to do something like Helldivers 2, but with medieval-ish, like magic, swords, and fantasy, that kind of thing, which I think is fun right there. But I'm going to add more to it. For now, though, all I'm going to do is make a castle that shoots things. I think that'll be fun enough. All right.
Yeah, I think of that scene from Monty Python.
I still need to do the creepy things. Okay.
Yeah.
Maybe not this week, but I'm thinking we'll start putting the podcast up on Fridays. I can't promise that I'll get that this Friday. It may have to be the Friday after that.
Because I might be catching up from an all-nighter.
Yeah, I'm already planning an all-nighter. Luckily, Wednesday is my day off this week, so I can spend an all-nighter tomorrow. I'm old. We'll see how that goes. But I figure, it's a good excuse for an all-nighter at least. We'll see how long this...
Father of 4 trying to go for an all-nighter.
Well, I mean, sometimes they make me do an all-nighter anyway, but it's not while I'm trying to make anything happen. Yeah. They just tag team keeping me up for one reason or another. They're good at that.
And I'm usually just asleep.
Yeah. Lately, my daughter's been kicking me out of my bed. I've been sleeping on the couch for a long time now, that little minx.
I think it's been like a month.
I don't want to think about it. We need to get that child sleep trained again. She was sleep trained and she regressed at some point.
And she's teething again.
And my bed is...
She got sick. And then she's teething. Then got sick. And
yeah, that's why. Unfortunately, our bed is too small for me, my wife, and the baby, the dog, and the cat to all be on at the same time.
It used to be your parents' bed, apparently.
Yes. Too poor. Oh, man. Well, I don't think I have anything else to talk about. My wife drew a knife on me. Random.
We were talking about battles and stuff, and I just thought about drawing something on your arm. It was going to be a tree, but then it didn't form the way I wanted.
Isn't that so distracted?
You have
Wait.
another one on your chest.
Wait.
Look what happens when you poke one eye in.
Oh God. Oh God. It's stuck. Poor little alligator. It's bug-eyed.
Hello. A double barrel. Okay.
Do a barrel roll. Anyway, hope you guys enjoyed it. Next lesson. I gotta look at it. It's been a while since I read what the next one is, but we should be jumping into judges. Yeah. Fat guy gets stabbed and the whole sword goes in him and his fat covers it and like dirt and guts come out. It's hilarious. God sanctions assassinations. It's a thing. What else? Yeah. So a couple of judges. We'll talk briefly about the kings. And then I think after that, we'll be jumping to some of the prophets. Probably Ezekiel, if I remember correctly. And then we'll be ending the year talking about Christmas and all that.
Rosie, come here.
Crazy to think it's mid-October already. God, oh my God, dog.
It's a big dog.
All right. Say goodbye, Rosie.
Rosie.
Your adoring fans need to see you.
Say bye.
Say bye. Woof, woof, woof. Yes? No, oh my God. Okay. We need to sign out. This dog's going crazy. Okay. You guys have been awesome. Do the like, do the subscribe, do the share. Remember, next lesson will be coming up Sunday. We'll still stream Monday. Podcast will be either this Friday or next Friday, depending on when I have time. I'll have some sort of video game dev blog for you guys to mock me as I try to learn Unreal Engine 5 together. And,
So unreal.
you know, anyone who wants to try it. By the way, though it is hard, I've discovered the process is a lot easier than I expected. So, any of you guys have been holding back, maybe you had a video game block around it in your head or something like that, I really encourage you guys to just try Unreal Engine out. You can get it for complete free. You only have to, oh my God, you only have to pay anything to Epic or whatever, forget the company that owns them. If your video game or whatever, oh my God, you okay? Makes $1 million, and then you only have to pay like 5%.
I just didn't want to scream my eyes out.
So till then, it's completely free, and they have a bunch of free assets and all kinds of stuff. It's a lot of fun. And, you know, during my game dev blog, whenever I get a little footage together, I will talk about some of the pitfalls I ran into and the things that are literally banging in my head. Like on my day off, I spent about 8 hours attempting to do something and failing completely.
And then we moved
That
the
was
whole
miserable.
house around.
And then my wife enslaved me for a little longer. But yeah, that's life. Especially when you have a deadline. Anyway, I gotta get going. I'll catch you guys later. Be good. Happy purging. I got nothing else. Hello, dog. You what are you doing? Okay, no, I'm just gonna hit the button now. Later, everybody.
Oh.